All right, so Executive Director of American Compass, he's going to join us now to talk about how corporations have an obligation to treat workers better.
Taking on the collective problem through legal, economic, and social constraints that have fallen away in recent decades, Oren tells us why American Compass is taking on the Business Roundtable, and he joins us now. Always great to have you, Oren.
Good to see you, Oren.
Great to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
So just explain, for people who don't know, first explain what the Business Roundtable is, and then explain what American Compass is doing vis-a-vis the Business Roundtable.
Sure. The Business Roundtable is basically a lobbying group in Washington. It's not made up of corporations. It's actually made up of the CEOs themselves. So the members are the CEOs of really most of the biggest companies based here in America. And a year ago, they put out a statement that got a ton of attention, sort of very laudably saying that, they thought they should not just think about shareholders and profits, but think much more broadly about all of their different stakeholders, like workers and customers and suppliers and communities. And a lot of folks, I think, initially got very excited about this. The problem was maybe somewhat predictably there hasn't really been any follow through. And it seems to, like most corporate social responsibility, have been more an exercise in public relations than in actually making a difference for workers or families or communities.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to go back, that was one of my first big monologues here, was actually on the Business Roundtable and that letter, which I thought was BS at the time. So what are you calling out, Oren? You've got this new open letter that you're here to announce, and tell us a little bit about that you're joining with some other organizations. What are you actually calling on them to do?
Yeah, so American Compass joined with, it's an interesting group because we're across the political spectrum. American Economic Liberties Project, which is fairly left of center, and American Principles Project, which is quite right of center. All of us to say, look, we actually think corporate responsibility is very important. And frankly, we're not all surprised that a bunch of CEOs signing a letter haven't accomplished much. But what we'd like to see, and what we think a group like the Roundtable could really make a big difference in, is actually businesses coming together and saying, look, we're going to constrain ourselves. We know that when we're just out there competing, we're only going to focus on profit. But if we actually get together in something like the Roundtable, we could all agree, here are some things we think matter, like workers and families and communities. Here are some ways we're going to measure what we're doing and put that data out there so people can hold us accountable. And then here are some things we're actually going to ask for changes in public policy. So instead of just lobbying government to get rid of regulation and make us more free to do whatever we want, we could actually ask government to make some rules that we think would make things work better. We could get rid of non-compete agreements and no poach agreements. We could get rid of abusive H-1B visas, all sorts of things that if these CEOs were serious, they could actually get on the side of trying to make reforms that would make the economy work better.
Right.
I think it's a really important and really exciting initiative, Oren, and I'm glad you guys are involved with this. I'd love to know what the response has been so far. But also, what I like is that it recognizes the reality of how much power these corporations have, not only in our society, but vis-a-vis government. What does it say about where we are, though, that maybe the most effective path to making these kinds of changes is to get the corporations themselves to change, rather than having any hope that the government is going to impose any of this on them?
Well, I think the reality is that a lot of our discussion and debate of economic issues runs through what business leaders tell us. And so, the argument from the business community and from a lot on the right of center has pretty much been just let corporations do whatever they want, and that's going to work out best for everybody. And if you talk about anything else, then everybody screams, oh, you're destroying jobs, you're going to make us poor, and so forth. And I think the left of center has actually been a very ineffective counterweight to that. The left of center's view has mostly been, well, we just need bigger government programs and more redistribution to help everybody who's been left behind. And so, I think the idea of saying it's unfortunate maybe that we have to ask it this way, but there's potential for corporations who, I think CEOs probably individually would like to see things working differently, but they're really constrained in their own behavior. And so to your question about initial response, it's one thing that's been very interesting. This is part of a broader project American Compass is doing on what we call corporate actual responsibility. And it came just as Uber's CEO put out an op-ed in the New York Times, pretty much admitting straightforwardly, look, we don't treat our drivers the way we should, and offering a solution in the direction I think is exactly right, which is saying, Uber itself isn't just going to go and act differently and give up market share to Lyft and everybody else. But here are things that our whole industry should agree to. And then here are some places where we actually think we do need more public policy. Now, we'll see if they follow through with it. But that approach from a group like Uber to admit that just letting companies do whatever they want is not working out well, and then to actually ask for constraints for the industry and from public policy, that gives me at least a little bit of hope. The Uber CEO retweeted our project, and so that's the kind of movement we'd love to see, and we're hoping we can see from the Business Roundtable as well.
Right, and we actually covered that, but then at the same time, this judge ruling in California, and Uber went right back to kind of its threatening practices and trying to withhold business to try to compel, trying to shape the market the way that they want. As part of the initiative, Oren, you've also, I think what we should also call out is that there is an actual resistance to this, not just from the business community, but ideologically on the right. They attack you in the Wall Street Journal all the time. Why do you think that is? What is it about this ideological commitment to saying we have to let businesses do whatever they want when we're living in an age where, evidence could probably never be clearer that that's probably a bad idea?
Well, it is an ideological commitment. I mean, it's interesting. We've got this 1-year anniversary of the Business Roundtable letter last year. Next month happens to be the 50th anniversary of Milton Friedman's very famous essay that kind of kicked off the idea of shareholder primacy, saying that businesses don't have any social responsibilities and businesses should just think about profit. And built on that mindset is this idea that that is actually going to work out best for everybody. Now, to what extent that's sort of a well thought out assumption versus just a very convenient assumption, I think depends on who specifically you're talking with. But it's very strongly baked into now a full generation of think tanks and political leaders and policy proposals. And as you said, I think the evidence is pretty clear that it just doesn't get us where conservatives want to go. Conservatives care about a lot of things besides corporate profits. Right. And I think conservatives are starting to recognize that what is best for multinational corporations is not yielding the best for workers and families and communities, and ultimately for our whole nation. And so that's something that I think folks on the right of center are in the process of rethinking, and I hope we can bring some responses and ideas that also sound in conservatism and aren't just about kind of government taking over and doing it instead, but actually bring us back to an economy that works and that has workers and corporations out there competing, but doing so in a way that also builds the kind of society that we want.
Yeah. And Oren, where can people read the letter, and where can they find out more about our American Compass?
It's all at AmericanCompass.org. The letter's right at the homepage, and we've got a lot of other stuff there as well. So hope people will check it out.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. And I also contribute there twice a month, so you can read the blog. So.
Don't want to miss that.
Yeah, do not want to miss that. Thanks, Oren.
Thanks, Oren. Great to see you.
Guys. See you later.
All right, we'll have more Rising for you after this.